Okay, should we make a start? So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this London HR Connection webinar on the subject of the importance of cars in your environmentally friendly post-COVID benefits offering. It's a great topic. I'm sure we'll have a great session this afternoon. Just wanted to mention for GDPR purposes, this session is being recorded, and we will be making the recording available to everyone after this webinar. So it'll be available for you to review. Your microphones will be muted during the webinar because we have a large number of people participating. However, we do want you to submit questions and to interact. We have the Q&A feature on Zoom, and we'll either pick up these questions during the main session as we go through, or in the specific Q&A session at the end, which I'll host. This scheduled webinar is up to 1 hour, so we're due to finish at 6 o'clock. For those of you who haven't met before, my name's Craig McCoy. I'm the chair of the LHR Connection, which is a role I've actually held for the last 7 years. I'm also a senior HR director. I have, for my sins, I have 35 years experience in the HR profession, and I've held 16 HR director jobs over that time. I'm currently the interim HR director of Cornwall Care, which is a large elderly care business, obviously, in Cornwall. A few words about London HR Connection. We're a long-established professional networking group for anyone with an interest in the world of HR. We originally established in the 1980s. Our origins were part of the CIPD, and we remain affiliated to the CIPD, but we have an independent board which I chair with 9 senior HR professionals. In normal times, of course, we've always been well known for our live events with great speakers and great networking opportunities, a glass or two of wine and some great canapes. Can't do that at the moment, unfortunately, sadly. Those days will come back, don't worry. But at the moment, obviously, we're entirely online. We are a not-for-profit organisation. Our model is based on commercial sponsorship in order to cover our costs. This slide shows our current annual sponsors, as you can see, drawn from many sectors across the HR industry and academia. Move to the next slide, please. So I'd like now to introduce our speakers, and our sponsor for today's webinar is Tusker, the award-winning car benefit organisation. And our speaker from Tusker is Alison Argyle, who's the Business Development Director for Tusker. We have a strong panel of speakers joining Alison, including Fiona McIver, who's a reward director at Engie, the leading energy and services business. We have Vanessa Corsi, who is Pensions Operations Manager at EDF. As I'm sure you'll know, is the largest producer of low-carbon electricity in Great Britain. And John Burdekin, who runs JB Consulting, who are experts in employee car ownership. So a great lineup of speakers across many aspects of this important topic. So now, without any further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Alison from Tusker. Alison.
Thanks, Craig. Good evening, I should say, probably nearly everybody. Thanks for joining us today. So as Craig mentioned, I'm Ali Argyle, Business Development Director at Tusker. I've been working with Tusker for 16 years now. And you're probably aware that Tusker are a market leading provider in salary sacrifice car benefit schemes, which we've been operating since 2000 and making up now 2008, where we introduced our first salary sacrifice car scheme, and now provide schemes to more than 600 customers who have circa 900,000 eligible employees. So really excited to introduce our panelists in a minute. I'll get them to actually say hello. And I'm really excited to talk about some of the things that we've seen during 2020, how COVID had impacted really the way that we all work, travel, interact with each other, and how we've seen the significant benefit of looking at that focus on our environmental policy and focus, and seeing how many businesses are changing their view to the way that we've seen fewer commuters and really looking at those CSR objectives. So today we're going to kind of break it into 4 sections, which is to talk about HR and employee benefits. going to talk a little bit about what Tusker are doing, what the impact that we've seen across our business and our customers over the last 12 months. Going to look at industry changes for salary sacrifice and the move or transition to the electric revolution. And then we're going to talk also about how salary sacrifice car schemes have been implemented and get the view from our panelists around their own genuine experience of implementing and running salary sacrifice car benefit schemes. So with no further ado, I am going to interact with the slides on and off. So don't worry if you just end up with us, as we don't want it to be death by PowerPoint. And I will introduce the panelists to come and say hello in the first instance. So John, over to you for a second.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everybody. My name is John Burdekin from John Burdekin Fleet Consulting. I kind of help businesses understand everything they need to know about electric vehicles. So just anything about, you've got to make the switch to electric vehicles by 2030. How are you going to do it? What do you need to do? So my background is in the leasing world. So really just helping people unlock some of the commercial and environmental benefits from electric vehicles in salary sacrifice or indeed in any other space.
Thanks, John. Over to you, Fiona.
Hi everyone, I'm Fiona McIver. I'm the Reward Director at ENGIE for UK and Ireland. ENGIE is a company that's focused on energy and services around production and supply of energy, facilities management and regeneration, so 3 natural bedfellows. But our purpose is actually to make zero carbon happen. So switching over to an electric fleet is obviously very dear to our heart. Whatever we can do to achieve that, we will do.
Thank you. And over to Vanessa.
Hi, I'm Vanessa. I'm the Pensions and Benefits Operations Manager at EDF Energy, and our ambition is to achieve net zero, help Britain achieve net zero. So similar in that regard. Yeah, I look after all the different pensions and benefits that we have on offer in the UK.
Brilliant. I thought it would be sensible to kind of get a steer from the audience. So we're going to run a quick poll just to get a feel as to who's already either running a car benefit scheme, a salary sacrifice scheme, who's considered it and so on. So Denise is just going to put the poll up, I believe. And if you wouldn't mind just giving us a steer so we can kind of understand kind of who's doing what, that would be really helpful. Just give that a minute to tick through. Got a few more. Okay, I think we're about there. So we've got about 36% of our audience that are already operating a salary sacrifice car benefit scheme. We've got 45% that aren't and about 18% that are planning to do so, or at least reviewing across the next 6 months. So that's brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm going to share, I think I'm going to share that. Yep, brilliant. Okay, so I think while we want to utilise the panelists here, so in terms of kind of the role that employee benefits can play in providing businesses to meet their growing environmental targets and also focusing on that carbon reduction, so it'd be interesting to hear from Fiona in the first instance to chat through their experience around their benefits strategy when they were putting the scheme together and how that meets and sits in with what they're currently doing. So I think I can get rid of that.
Sure. So obviously I've mentioned that our purpose is to make zero carbon happen. And we want to do that both internally and externally. So it's not just for business and communities that we work with, but also to encourage our employees to go forth and choose an electric vehicle. These numbers are quite small. I do want to point out that we do also have a fleet of cars that are available to our employees where they need to travel, and we've achieved just about 20% electric on that fleet of around 4,000 vehicles. So for the majority of employees, they actually get handed a car, which we are moving to electric, but this is specifically for our, as a benefit, as an addition to our employees. And we just felt it was really key to add this, so that obviously for the higher rate taxpayers and the 40% taxpayers, they could really take advantage of those benefit in kind rates, but also for employees further down the scale who might not be able to afford a deposit on a car. This guarantees that they will be able to get a car. So it doesn't guarantee, but it gives them the best possible option to get a car without a deposit, including all maintenance, including all insurances. And we really thought that was key to be able to make that affordable to our employees. So yeah, I would say that was kind of our main driver behind it, if you'll excuse the pun.
Nice pun. Have you seen, or do you think that kind of COVID has influenced at all engagement in the scheme or different behaviours across your employee base?
I would say with this, it's been fairly consistent. I haven't noticed any spikes or lulls coming across because of COVID. I don't know whether because of this shelter at home aspect, you'd think people would be using their cars less, but you still need to nip to the shops or whatnot, even if you can't necessarily go around and see granny. So, you know, we still have seen car orders come in. I do think COVID's going to have a massive impact on the ways we work, which will possibly have a knock-on effect around our car strategies. But, you know, who wants to share a bus when you can have your own germ-free car? But
yeah, and I think that's definitely what we've had very much that response, like across the 2020, I think, where people have you know, sort of started to look at the scheme perhaps even earlier than they'd originally planned, purely because of people, you know, wanting to keep their employees safe, but also from an employee perspective, suddenly not, as you say, not wanting to get on the bus or car share where they're not able to walk or cycle to work. Yeah,
exactly, absolutely. Although obviously we do run a cycle to work scheme.
So Vanessa, did you want to just give a quick summary around EDF's strategy when it came to employee benefits and putting the car scheme in place?
Yeah, I mean, I'm tempted to say what Fiona said. That might cover it, but no, it's similar in the sense that we're an electric company. We are promoting helping Britain to achieve net zero. So it seems silly not to be walking the walk. As we were talking the talk. So we wanted to ensure, we were offering electric car schemes to our customers and electric tariffs to our customers, or to ensure the right timing in terms of those car charges. So it made sense to do it from an employee perspective as well. Fiona's already mentioned the savings in terms of the benefit in kind tax being zero. It was a no-brainer in that respect. Yeah, I mean, we had a really successful launch. I think the penetration rate was predicted to be around 1%, but it's coming up to 4%, which I'm pretty excited about. So,
yeah, and I think when you think the scheme, your scheme was launched literally at the point of the pandemic,
February last year, yeah,
wasn't it? So kind of, it definitely, I think, but the trends around us being quite thinking that maybe people weren't as electric ready as they actually have been.
I think, and we've got other things. So we've got, you know, carbon footprint tool, and we've expanded the bike to work scheme. But, you know, the car scheme is by far had the biggest impact. And in terms of employer national insurance contributions, we're looking at savings of around 450 grand a year.
Yeah,
so
significant.
It's benefits on both sides. Fiona mentioned, you know, people not being able to raise a deposit. This is a perfect solution, but, you know, obviously there's benefits for EDF themselves.
Yeah.
A question for me, Vanessa and Fiona, actually. What kind of savings are your employees seeing on these cars from a tax efficiency perspective, roughly?
Lots.
Yeah, I mean, they probably where they're choosing a pure electric vehicle. I mean, the savings are clearly during this financial year, i.e. not when we move into into April, 6th of April, because there's no benefit in kind during that first tax year. You can literally take the cost and take a straight either 32% off that cost for a 20% taxpayer, or a 42% net saving or straight saving for a 40% taxpayer. So it really significant. And even with the introduction of the 1% scale charge for pure electric cars next year, it's negligible. It's between £9 and £18 on a quite an expensive pure electric vehicle. So
of course, your insurance is included as well, right?
Absolutely. And I think
so that's another cost that you don't have to incur, isn't it?
Yeah, you're making those savings across every element. So, both the finance of the vehicle, the maintenance, the tyres, the motor insurance, it's all a fixed cost. So it's all inclusive, which means those savings, literally go across every single element of it.
So I guess for the audience today, for the 45% that aren't currently running salary sacrifice schemes, are we talking, I don't know, £150 a month, £200 a month savings to your employees?
Even more so, yeah.
Even more so.
Yeah.
Even more.
I mean, to give it, John, we talked about so selfishly, I picked a car myself, an electric vehicle. And I, to give people a flavour, I was driving an Audi, petrol Audi, on a personal lease, and it was costing me about 270 quid a month. Plus I had to pay a deposit of a couple of grand, and I needed to pay my insurance. And the value of the car was £21,000. And now I'm driving an electric Golf, which was £30,000 or £31,000 of the value of the car. I don't need to pay for insurance. I didn't need to pay for a deposit up front, and it's costing me £250 a month. So, yeah,
exactly that.
For me.
And if we're talking about relevance in a post-COVID world, certainly to an HR community as we are here, it's pretty reasonable to assume it's going to be unlikely that pay rises and bonuses are going to be forthcoming in huge amounts. So from what you're suggesting, this kind of feels like it's, how can I give a benefit to my employees if I can't give them a pay rise or a benefit for the obvious reasons post-COVID? This could be, it feels like you guys have unlocked a benefit for you and any other Tusker customer. It feels like this could be a way of actually giving what is effectively a decent pay rise to your employees without it costing the employer any money. In fact, saving them money.
We've had regular uptake per month, John, and I don't know, because I don't have no details around people's personal leases, but I suspect, and I've been given some anecdotal evidence, that that's because people's personal leases are ending, and they're realizing the value of their employee benefit.
We done. I mean, we just ran, it was our benefits window just now, and we ran a survey asking some questions around electric cars. And of the people that actually did the survey, 70% said that they would see themselves driving an electric car in the next 1 to 3 years. So there's the interest there. What we're really trying to do is remove barriers. So to make it as easy as possible, as seamless as possible, that's also coming under our company brand. So yes, it's Tusker providing everything, but we're calling it, my green car as part of our branding. So you really get that double traction of helping the environment, helping your employees, and helping your balance sheet as well.
Sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's an amazing stat, 70% that would consider it in that period of time. And I think that is one of the things that, sort of we definitely pick up when talking to organizations, reviewing or looking at a scheme, is thinking that people perhaps aren't as ready for that transition as, in reality, they seem to be. We're going to talk a little bit, I think, about sort of, the incentives and infrastructure. But I thought one of the next poll we might do, which was just to kind of get a gauge from our audience as to kind of what they would perceive, or what they think that the most sort of popular fuel type of vehicles on salary sacrifice car schemes kind of are as at today, not necessarily what they are moving forward. So I don't know if Denise can pop up the next poll for us.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. But if she can, that
It
would
was
be
a
brilliant.
really good poll as well. It was the best one.
You never know. Oh, there we go.
Right.
So kind of again, just get a steer from our audience as to what they think currently is the most popular fuel type on the scheme. Well, it's interesting to see it moving backwards and forwards. Yeah, I think we're about there. So I think you can see the results on there, which is showing that 44% of our audience think that hybrid is the most current popular fuel type as such. Interestingly enough, then actually the audience is saying 30% electric, 30%, 22% petrol, and just 4% diesel. So John, what is your response looking at those stats?
Really, really interesting. You know, we've spent a lot of time talking about electric vehicles, and clearly there's a high proportion in Fiona and Vanessa's salary sacrifice schemes here. But it's interesting that people are perceiving hybrid to be popular on the schemes, and I'm sure they are, because the salary sacrifice benefits will still work on those. But it's interesting to see the petrol and the diesel piece, where of course it would need to be an incredibly low CO2 petrol or diesel vehicle to work properly, if at all, on a salary sacrifice scheme, because of some anti-avoidance tax legislation that would scupper it somewhat. I won't bore you with the details of that, but it's kind of, these schemes, as you guys all know on the panel, they lend themselves beautifully to electric vehicles because of the tax efficiencies of electric vehicles, and also maybe to a lesser extent on the plug-in hybrids. But it's not just about electric vehicles. The plug-in hybrids could work also on this. I suppose there's an interesting part as well around salary sacrifice, which is where it's offered to an all-employee population. And if we think about an all-employee population as people who aren't typically car eligible in a normal world, actually what the salary sacrifice scheme can do is introduce the non-car eligible people to benefit in kind. And in this case, as a positive, because if you're Joe Public Retail and you are a non-car eligible, you've got to go and find your own car, you don't benefit in kind. Anybody talking about 0% benefit in kind or 1% benefit in kind is kind of, it's always been seen as something that just benefits the company car drivers, the management, and the sales team. Actually, what the salary sacrifice scheme does is brings that benefit to the masses, because they are going to be taking advantage of 0% benefit in kind for at least another couple of weeks, possibly more realistically 1% coming from April 2021. So it's to me it's a great leveler. Salary sacrifice can get that benefit in kind benefit out to a wider population than just the car eligible community. So it's interesting to see that electric and hybrid are perceived as the greater ones, because they are.
Absolutely.
And it's just, and I think that will become more and more so, because as more and more people get to know the benefit in kind advantages of battery electric over plug-in hybrid and plug-in hybrid over ICE or internal combustion engines, it starts to drive the behavior towards battery electric and plug-in hybrid on schemes like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from a sort of a Tusker sort of stats as such, I mean, our order book as such sits at 45% at pure electric vehicles, 20% at FEV or ultra low emission. I mean, as you mentioned, John, there's hardly any fossil fuel vehicles available under ultra low emission. Literally, it's not even one handful, I don't think. So, you know, when you're looking at 65% being, you know, sort of accounting already for that electric and hybrid, it's quite, you know, the transition's been, you know, intense, I think, really. And I think, you know, the number of reasons that Tusker have seen around behavioural changes has really been such a better understanding of the government incentives around salary sacrifice car schemes and ultra low emission vehicles. So all the different incentives that they've put together, which we're going to just run through for a technical 10 minutes, I should say, or not even that, probably 5 minutes. But really as well, for me, seeing such a change with CSR objectives with our potential customers as well as our existing customers being much higher on their agenda. So actually, you know, whereas doing this for CELSAT schemes for 12 years, green credentials were almost kind of just a nice add-on, whereas now I genuinely see them as one of sort of the 4 key areas when someone's looking to put a scheme in, which has been really interesting. With the zero benefit in kind, it's kind of that opened the door to 40% taxpayers, which of course previously under the company car tax legislation didn't really work that well for 40% taxpayers. So that's almost opened a new audience. I think when we talk about availability in a bit, it'll be interesting to talk about some of the trends and sort of being able to re-engage at a higher rate with the lower salaried employees, because this is, you know, designed to be a benefit for everybody, really. I don't know kind of what you feel, Vanessa, in terms of the demographic that have engaged. Have you seen at EDF, have you seen a real broad spread?
Yeah, it's widespread. I'm going to generalise hugely, but the people that work on our power stations tend to be paid more than the people who work in our offices, in our contact centres, as you might imagine. But interestingly, the interest in the car scheme has been across all business units. So that has really impressed me, I guess, that there's interest across all parties.
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to think what's the cheapest car.
It's the 2x4.
It's a smart, it's a smart car.
So I'm trying to think what you're looking at as a net cost of that.
So it's what, 224 a month, I think, is that one?
Right.
Yeah, I think it might have been coming lower than that occasionally.
I think net, depending on term and mileage, I think is circa 150, 160 quid. It's you know, that per month in terms of that net impact. So in that's doing minimal mileage, but clearly people haven't been doing a great deal of mileage at this point in time, which I'm sure will change, definitely.
Just talking about technical challenges, I've just managed to delete a question from the Q&A. So I better I remember it. It was asking myself and Vanessa if we just have pure electric or if we have hybrid and petrol as well on the scheme. And my apologies for whoever I deleted it. It wasn't being nefarious. I just didn't know what to do. So on our scheme, whilst clearly the huge driver for us is the transition to electric vehicles, we actually launched our scheme way back in the distant memory of 2018. And at that point, we felt it was very key to still include hybrids as well as some lower CO2 emitting cars. So we do have petrol as well. No diesel, although some purists in the car world can argue about the cleanliness of diesel on blue versus petrol, but for us we were removing diesel entirely but still allowing up to I think 100 milligrams of CO2 for our cars, just to really broaden and widen the penetration into our company, because with the best will in the world, electric cars are more expensive. They are a different type of car. So we still wanted employees right throughout our company to have access to a car that they could achieve with no deposit, have the free maintenance, etc., etc.
And ours is electric and ULEV with very low CO2 But yeah, the uptake has been 92% electric, 93% electric.
Yeah, predominantly electric. It's been incredible. Yeah. So I kind of think sort of I mentioned before around some of the government incentives, and just thought it'd be really useful to perhaps just swing through what those might look like for those that aren't more familiar with our world as such. So I'm sure most people, it hasn't missed anybody's attention that the government have put together a Road to Zero strategy, which is going to see the ban of new petrol and diesel cars from 2030, which, when you think that's 9 years away, it's hard to kind of imagine. But I think what we have seen is just a game-changing attitude to electric vehicles, and kind of I'm going to talk through with John some of the changes with the manufacturers as well. But what do government incentives in terms of helping them achieve that Road to Zero strategy look like? Well, it has been around adoption, basically. How do you get people to adopt new technology? Some would say there's an inconvenience moving to electric. Some have found it a very easy transition, but the incentive to take the benefit in kind taxation system in terms of the scale charge from 16% down to 0 in 2020-21 tax year, and only apply 1% for next year, financial year coming in, 2% for the following 3 years after that, is clearly making the maths for salary sacrifice work really well around tax and national insurance savings on those vehicles. We've of course got the plug-in grant, which is probably a bone of contention for anybody that has been working with cars following OZEV's announcement on Thursday last week that they've reduced the eligibility criteria around the value of cars. So expensive cars previously was sitting at £50,000. There's now moved down to 35,000. And then also change the grant from 3 to 2.5. But that £2,500 into a pure electric vehicle is an incentive. I mean, John, you probably again more au fait with kind of a wider view on the impact and the benefit of the plug-in grant.
Yeah, it's disappointing that it was changed. We all knew the grants aren't there forever because they're there to encourage early adoption, as the purchase prices are a little more expensive than petrol and diesels. But of course, I mean, the grant is still there. What it does do is put some pressure on the manufacturers to bring some of their pricing down. And not for a moment do I think that the manufacturers, by the way, are overpricing. It is incredibly expensive to make and tool up and scale up for a completely battery electric vehicle. So there are huge sunk costs in making these things. However, they are under pressure now to get vehicles within certain price points. And we've, even since Thursday, we've already seen, I think it's Peugeot, Citroën, Kia and Vauxhall all make immediate price reductions on their electric vehicles because they're trying to fit it into this new cap of 35,000. I hear anecdotally that some of the more premium manufacturers, the Teslas, the Polestars of this world, are also thinking about bringing their price down, not below 35,000, but maybe to take 1,000 or 2 off their purchase price to soften the impact of it. So yeah, there has been some impact, but I'll go back to the fact that the salary sacrifice thing, actually, if you're retail or non-car eligible going for your personal lease, that would be a straight cost increase to you, that reduction in grant. Salary sacrifice brings into play the benefit in kind things that weren't previously available to you. So yes, the plug-in grant has been lowered somewhat, but I don't think it derails the road to electric. It's probably put a slight brake on it for a month or two, but it won't stop the uptake of electric vehicles.
Yeah. Absolutely. And they've also, of course, got the home charging and business charging grant. Vanessa and Fiona, just thought, you know, kind of get some impact, sort of insight from you around the adoption around home charge installation and perhaps business charging that you've put in place.
Yeah, so we actually have part of our company does do installations of charge points, so it kind of went hand in hand. So for all of our employees who are on the fleet or with Tusker, we are offering them a free install. And actually on the poll that we ran at the benefits window, we asked, would people be deterred if they couldn't have a home charger installed? And 63% said they would be deterred. I guess they don't maybe live in London where you're less likely to have your own driveway. So I don't know how regionally based that poll was, but certainly it's the infrastructure, I think, that generally puts people off rather than the range anxiety. Now that we know that cars can easily do, you know, 100 miles plus, 200 miles plus, I think that's eased people's range anxiety. It's the infrastructure around how to charge it that is causing, not issues, we'll get there, but that's one of the main blockers that we find.
And Vanessa, clearly you have a charge point partner as well.
We do. So sister company in Pod Point. We've done all right. I mean, not everybody has installed a home charge point, myself included. I've got a 3-prong plug, and that works fine for me. But so we've probably got about 20 odd sites, counting up all the different power stations and offices that we've got, and we're on track to have installed 300 charge points by the end of the year.
Wow.
So yeah, it's obviously well supported for us.
Excellent. Okay, I won't run through the other areas, but I guess one at the bottom is probably the in-life one for when world does return to some point of normality, which would be, of course, the green number plate system that's been introduced to help with ultra low emission zones, and clearly white label pure electric vehicles from those zones. So I suppose for me, that's probably a real another cost saving opportunity for especially London-based organisations. But ultimately, as we see councils start to bring those plans that they put in place, clearly during the pandemic, have seen the CO2 levels come back down. No doubt we'll be picking those plans back up moving forward. One of the things we do get asked about a lot is the choice. So John has kindly said he'll run through this just to kind of give you a steer really around availability and kind of what people have got the option to select.
Yeah, sure. When I first started talking to clients about electric vehicles, and it must have been back in, I don't know, 2005 or something like that, and I was trying to get companies to get on board with and unlock the financial savings of electric vehicles, I had 4 to choose from. I had a BMW i3, I had a Renault Zoe, I had a Tesla Model S, and I had a Nissan Leaf. And that was it. So where people were saying, yeah, but there's not much choice out there, I didn't have a leg to stand on, really. Unless one of those 4 worked for you, EVs didn't work for you. Fast forward to today, and we now have 27 manufacturers offering at least one full battery electric vehicle in the UK. And I've got to put some differentiations here. So 27 manufacturers, between them, they offer 44 models. And within those 44 models available, there are 205 derivatives. And just to break those 3 down, a manufacturer is Tesla, a model is either the Tesla Model 3 or the Tesla Model S or the Model X. And then you've got 3 different versions of the Tesla 3, for instance. So that's how you can scale up to 205. Are there some gaps in the product lineup at the moment? Yes, I think if we're realistic, is there a big family estate car like the good old-fashioned Mondeo estate or the Passat estate? Not yet, but it'll come. Is there a decent convertible out there? Probably not yet, but it'll come. People carrier, if you've got 5 or 6 kids, or you carry a 5-a-side football team around, or you have need of the Ford Galaxy or the VW Charan back in the day, then they will come to market. So there's the odd gap in there, but to have 44 models and 205 derivatives of those models, and to know that there are 23 brand new models to add to that list this year alone, it feels like every month there's a new one coming. From BMW have just launched the i4, and that's coming later in the year. We've got the Nissan Ariya coming this year. We've got the Skoda Enyaq coming this year. We've got a new Kia coming this year. We've got a new Hyundai coming this year. There are all sorts, right from the budget models, if I can call them budget models, the affordable models, right up to the luxury of Porsche. There are all sorts of different models coming on board, and there's some interesting players that are really coming to the party here. They've been a little bit behind the curve, but some of the German manufacturers really are now starting to come to play in this space, and one of them is particularly Volkswagen. So the ID3 has come, and ID4 is coming, and actually, if you look beyond that, there are plans for ID6, ID2, ID1. There's a bit of a trend in what they're calling them, but they've got a huge, great production line of these things ready to go. Mercedes the same, EQC, EQA, EQB, EQS. These things are all coming, and coming soon. So the choice is good. There's the odd gap, but within a year, there's going to be a really, really extensive choice of electric. These are pure electric vehicles, by the way, not hybrids. These are all pure electric vehicles.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just that transition, as you say, of what was available even this time last year, the year before that, is hard to sort of really see.
Yeah, I think so. And I think also there's the people talk about, oh yeah, but there's a massive long lead time to wait for electric vehicles. That in the past there has been. Myself, I drive a Kia e-Niro, and I had to wait 9 months for mine. Thankfully, unless you can tell me otherwise, as a main supplier of these, I don't think there's a key issue with lead times on electric vehicles. 3 months, 4 months, which
it's
isn't
definitely
6 weeks.
6 weeks, fantastic. It's not really out of step with petrol or diesel, with the odd exception.
And I think, we've got the savvy about making sure that supply chain issue doesn't exist, the carving out stock orders way before, so that you're early in the queue to be able to facilitate, delivery much quicker, is being really key for us. I think Brexit probably did us a bit of a favour, because in reality, everybody was planning, thinking it was going to clearly have all sorts of issues sort of in January, February, which in the end didn't manifest, thankfully. So of course, there was again sort of a better stock supply on some models than we'd anticipated.
Sure.
Yeah, and I thought what was interesting, John, was maybe just to touch on kind of, this real adoption by the manufacturers around
and let's look at the reasons why. Do we think the manufacturers are making this just because their customers are telling them to do it? Actually, no. Let's bust that myth for a start. They are under massive pressure from the EU and also from the UK government. If we're talking post-Brexit, the UK government has put something very similar in. The EU have put targets in place for all manufacturers that their average CO2 for all the cars they make, this is cars, not vans, by the way, it's a different target for vans, but cars, 95 grams per kilometre as the average CO2 of all the cars they produce. And if they miss that target by the end of 2021, then they're staring at a fine. And the fine is €95 per gram they miss. So if you do the sums on that, and we've got an example on the slide here, if somebody misses their target by 1 gram, then actually, if they sold 4.5 million cars in Europe, which is not unreasonable for one of the main players in there, so the mainstream manufacturers, that's a €4.27 million fine. It's like, okay, so that's serious. So that's why you see the announcements from Ford. That's why you see the announcements from Jaguar that they're moving, Volvo, they're moving to a pure electric base. Yes, of course, they see the demand coming from their customers. They see that they won't be able to sell petrol or diesel vehicles, new ones, after 2030. But they're also very, very aware of this target / incentive / penalty that they have to play along with. And that target's only going to get stiffer, because by 2025, it's got to be 81 grams per kilometre. So the manufacturers are driving people to, pardon the pun again, Fiona, take your pun again, but the manufacturers are driving behaviour here for customers as well, because pretty soon you won't be able to buy anything else because they won't be making it.
It makes more sense for them to transition to electric rather than focus on cheating the system's emission tests.
Couldn't possibly comment, Fiona.
That's really interesting. Thanks, John. It's kind of good to kind of put that positioning around that sort of previous today, kind of what's coming and why it's coming, which is really good. And then I think the last segment, because we want to leave a little bit of time for some Q&A, was just to kind of get a quick steer from Fiona and Vanessa around how they've kind of found implementing and actually running a scheme from a kind of in-life experience. So Vanessa, I don't know if you want to just kind of give us a quick snapshot overview to help the audience kind of get a steer for what that's looked like.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fun. It was so yeah, I mean, we did a lot of lead up towards the launch. We spent a lot of time ensuring that the systems behind the scenes worked as well. So the single sign-on with our benefits platform, just to make it as easy as possible. I was probably quite explicit with our employees around what they needed to do. So I guess it may sound quite paternalistic, but I guess what I was saying in the communications was, you need to go and research this. This is, you know, this is different to a petrol car. You need to make sure it's right for you. So we did quite a bit on that in terms of being explicit about the responsibility for the employee. I guess the launch was successful, and Tusker have sort of commented on that and on our launch being as successful as it was. I think what we did well was engage lots of different groups. So we engaged HR first and told them what was coming, why it was good, and what their responsibility in it was, which was basically to tell people to visit the My Benefits platform. Then we told line managers, so this is coming, your employees are going to be made aware of this, they're going to ask you questions, point them in the direction of the My Benefits platform. And then we launched to employees. So there was quite a big build up to, you know, it's on its way, it's coming. And I mean, the spike we had in the first month was huge. And we haven't maintained that over the months, but, you know, in the last year, I think it's about 13, 14 orders a month.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we've maintained it.
And Fiona, from your perspective, I know clearly your implementation was a long time ago.
So long ago.
But just kind of general.
Yeah, I would say that the key thing really is the making sure that you've involved payroll right from the very beginning. Obviously ran other salary sacrifice schemes for childcare vouchers for cycle to work. So I naively assumed it would be very simple for them to just roll one more, and it is simple. It's just you need to make sure they've written the right wage types in. So top tip, involve payroll. And other than that, I guess it's the actual nuts and bolts of it. It's making sure that managers are aware of their responsibilities, as we have managers authorise the car leasing agreements. So obviously they need to be aware if anything's going to happen to the employment of the person who's asked for the car, they need to make sure that they are authorising it or not authorising it as is appropriate. So just a little bit around the managers training would be another top tip. But other than that, Tusker were awesome, held our hands, came along to road shows, brought along a Tesla, which was fabulous. You know,
it always still
fantastic.
gets everyone
I got to go in the Tesla as well.
Such good fun.
No, always gets them really excited. It's really interesting. It's always kind of, I think, good to help people kind of from a first-hand experience here, kind of how things have run with yourselves. There are a number of questions which I would try and get through, but I think one that is close to a lot of our hearts, which is says, what's the charging infrastructure like for people who need a car to travel a lot of miles but might be anxious about the range of the car? John's, yeah, they're all jumping up here. So John, do you want to kind of
Shall I take that one? Yeah, it's the charging infrastructure is more extensive than you might think if you're not close to it. There are a load more than you would think, and I'll give you some ideas, and I'll give you some rough figures here. These are growing by about 1,000 a month, by the way. So that's how quickly this is happening. But there's about 14,000 locations in the UK that have charge points. Think of that as the equivalent of petrol stations locations. At those locations, there's there's 40,000 charge point sockets. Think of those as petrol pumps. So that's the kind of thing. And if you want a bit of context against those 14,000 locations, guess what? Guess how many petrol stations there are in the UK? There's 8,030. So there's already more locations for charging locations than there are petrol stations, and that's only going one way. That's before we've even factored in around about 220,000 people who've had home charge points installed. So I've got a petrol station on the side of my house. I've got a home charge point. So in many cases, you don't even need the public charging. I do accept you do need it for the longer journeys, of course, but the charging network is more extensive than you might think. And by the way, if you're thinking of going abroad, it's just as good over there as well.
Yeah, it's I think when you kind of take those numbers into account and the growth, it is quite phenomenal. I mean, a lot of our my direct reports have traveled, 20,000-30,000 miles a year, and the majority have transitioned already to pure electric. And the feedback I get from them is that yes, you have to be organized. The infrastructure is not perfect. We'd love to see more consistency across charge rates. We'd like to see more consistency around apps and things like that. But actually, from a work ethic perspective, having to stop and charge for 20 minutes in some with a Tesla, half an hour, 40 minutes for another, they've actually commented back on how easy it is to just utilize now that time for catching up on those phone calls, doing their emails, so that they're getting home and not having kind of like a full day's catch up to do at the end of it. So kind of from a productivity perspective, it's just a different way of working that they've really envisaged. Don't know whether that kind of sits with other people. We had someone ask whether or not we see a lot of customers moving towards electric only schemes. I'll take that in terms of my experience, what that looks like across most of the people we're talking to. Typically most people are insisting now on ultra low emission schemes, so cars only available that have got 75 grams of CO2 emissions or less. There are some pure electric schemes. I think it's just some people still then get nervous about, well, what if they haven't got that charging infrastructure? What if they are doing a lot of miles, and allow them to be a little bit more flexible? Haven't had anybody yet that said they only want sort of limited it. But I mean, the scheme can be limited by CO2 grams anyway. So you could choose to say it's 50 grams only. And then really you're just capturing everything that's kind of going to be the most tax efficient position it can be in. So it's a bit of flexibility.
I've come across a couple who have gone pure battery electric only.
Yeah.
I would caveat that by saying one of those are closely involved with the making of lithium, so they've got a vested interest in batteries. But no, I've seen a couple of salary sacrifice schemes that are battery electric only.
Yeah, absolutely. So that covered off those questions there. There was one that did say, if you were going to implement a scheme again, Fiona and Vanessa, would you do anything differently?
I don't think I would, actually. I think if I was to do it right now, I would be less cautious around the availability of the cars, because there was just less electric cars in 2018 than there are now. So I think
no, it didn't even cross my mind. There was so much there.
Yeah.
It's not every single model, and but yeah, there's so much there. It didn't even come as a factor.
Yeah.
The bit you said about payroll though, Fiona, is a good point. Like, if you're going to do it, tidy it all up, put it through payroll, make sure if you can do it on one platform. I've found all our benefits I've scraped together onto one platform. It just makes the communications and the sort of pointing people in the right direction a lot.
Sure. Or if you're unlucky enough to still run on 2 separate payrolls and platforms, then you just make do.
Oh, bless you. Yeah. Yes, you do.
The savings. Come on, Fiona, think of the savings. Richard Hicks has asked which are the most popular cars that are being ordered on the scheme.
Oh, we love a Tesla Model 3, an Audi e-tron,
yeah,
and a
really
Peugeot 2008. I think are our top 3.
Yeah, and I would sort of say for us 2019 versus 2020 top 10. 2019 we had 1 electric car in there, which was the Tesla Model 3 within our top 10, and a 1 hybrid. In 2020, 8 out of our 10 most popular cars were pure electric, with 1 PHEV and 1 traditional fossil fuel. So
wow,
just
funny what benefit in kind changes will do, won't it?
I tell you what, the incentives work. And I hope the government, could recognise that is kind of how you help with that transition, isn't it? What else have I got? I've got most organisations moving to flexible benefit schemes. This is from Nikki. What is the trend the panel see in the requests of car benefits compared to other benefits, with the exception of those who have a fleet vehicle to undertake their job? So have you seen a better engagement rate?
I think people are engaged. So the most popular benefit for us is obviously our private medical or healthcare cash plan. They're always the top ones and have been for ages.
Holiday purchase.
Sorry?
Holiday purchase for us.
Oh yeah, holiday trading is.
Well, they're going to have a lot of transition back over to next year by the looks of it.
Yeah. But in terms of interest, so yeah, obviously we've got 400 odd plus, what was it, 434, I think, at the last count, cars out there. So there are other benefits that are technically more, I guess, there's more uptake of them. But we've also, but the interest is there. So there's a Yammer group that focuses on electric vehicles. So that sort of buzz around it is much higher than would be on, I don't know, travel insurance.
What's really great with Tusker is that they give you the prestige handling of this scheme, even if the uptake is fairly low, as it has been consistent within my company, but we run a really large fleet of vehicles anyway, right down to very junior levels in the organisation. So what's really been fantastic is that Tusker doesn't look at it and go, oh, okay, you've got less than 1%, therefore, it's going to be manned by the least helpful people on earth. It really is still a comprehensive service.
That's what we aim for, prestige all the way.
There's a question there as well, Alison, that says about, did we consider the impact and cost of early leaver risks? And I think the insurance that Tusker provides us with in terms of early leavers and redundancies and 2P exercises, yeah, there is. We did take a calculated risk that something may happen, but I think that insurance product really does.
Yeah, really I think the protections, around an employer making a decision to put in a benefit that has got a level of financial risk, and clearly it's a car, so there are financial risks. But to have, most instances around resignation, redundancy, protected, so that's good, not just for the organisation, but good for the employee as well. They couldn't do a personal lease and have that same flexibility of being able to say, what happens, what does that look like if I leave in 2 years' time? What will I, what are my obligations? So
could become even more relevant as people come away from furlough as well.
Yeah.
If there's a spike in redundancies following furlough, actually something with a bit of protection in there could be quite handy.
I think it's going to be, but I think that kind of it's about putting that risk mitigation in to do the right thing in all those circumstances, because it's not good for employers, it's not good for employees either, is it? I think we're probably going to run out of time. Craig is going to be saying we're there. So if we have missed any questions, we're more than happy to take, to have direct contact after this. So please don't be shy, get in touch. Yeah, thank you very much. I'll pass back over to Craig now. Thank
you very much, Alison. And yeah, I think this conversation could have gone a lot longer, actually. I mean, there's a very lively debate and lots of questions coming up. So those of you whose questions haven't been able to be answered, please do get in contact with all of our speakers. I'm sure they'll be happy to engage with you and take your questions. So can I thank all of the speakers, some great insights today. In how company cars are evolving and the whole benefit structure is evolving, and just in terms of final comments, just like to say that our next session is on April the 14th, and the theme of the next session is on employee recognition in the post-COVID world, which is obviously something that we're all going to be coping with as we go forward. Our speakers are from one of our sponsors, Each Person, who are specialists in the employee engagement space, together with a range of experts and clients, including Bupa. So further details of this event are already on our website. And in fact, you can also see details of the subsequent event on April 28th. That's also live as well. So I hope you've enjoyed the session. I've certainly learned a lot about electric cars and hybrids, so I've found it very, very helpful. But until next time, thank you for joining and have a very good evening. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Craig. Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you.